When Germany lost in World War II, many high-ranking officers of the Wehrmacht, who had previously been known for their brutality and military strategies, were tried for the war crimes they committed. The Nazi generals, with their relentless determination, were responsible for brutal operations that changed the course of world history. One of them was Anton Dostler, a Wehrmacht general directly involved in several important battles in Europe. Although his name may not be as popular as some other prominent Nazi figures, Dostler played a significant role in the invasion of Italy and made decisions that would alter his fate. In 1944, Dostler issued an order considered a violation of international war law, and after Germany's defeat, he was captured by the Allies, tried, and sentenced to death. Dostler's story is part of a larger narrative that shows that the atrocities of war are not only fought on the battlefield but also held accountable in court. Anton Dostler was born on May 10, 1891 in Munich, Germany, and began his military career in the armed forces in 1910. He underwent training as a junior officer during World War I, where he gained valuable combat experience. With the rise of the Nazis to power in Germany, Dostler continued to climb the ranks in the Wehrmacht and held various strategic positions, especially during the invasion of Italy. As Germany entered an aggressive phase in Europe, Dostler was involved in many important decisions that directly affected the course of the war. As World War II progressed, German forces occupied Italy after the Italian government under Benito Mussolini suffered a major defeat in North Africa, and pressure from the Allies continued to mount. In September 1943, Italy signed an armistice with the Allies, which immediately triggered Germany to secure full control over northern and central Italy to prevent Allied advances. One part of this liberation strategy was Operation Ginny, which consisted of two separate missions carried out in early 1944. Operation Ginny 1 and 2 were secret sabotage missions conducted by U.S. forces during World War II in Italy. The mission aimed to destroy railway tunnels that would cut communication lines between German forces in Italy and their supplies from Europe. Operation Ginny I, carried out in February 1944, involved troops from the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, who attempted to blow up a railway tunnel between La Spezia and Genoa. However, they were unable to reach the planned location to carry out the sabotage and were ultimately forced to withdraw without completing the mission. After the failure of Operation Ginny 1, the Allies launched Operation Ginny 2 in March 1944 with the same goal: to destroy strategic railway tunnels between La Spezia and Genoa, Italy. This time, 15 fully armed American soldiers from the OSS were deployed again. They landed using rubber boats but soon realized they had landed at the wrong location. Despite trying to adapt to the situation, they were unable to reach the target within the set time frame. The situation worsened when their boat was discovered by local fishermen, who reported the finding to the Italian authorities. After receiving the report, the authorities immediately contacted the German forces, who, together with Italian troops, launched a sweeping operation. During a small skirmish with Italian fascist and German soldiers, the 15 American soldiers were captured and taken to the German headquarters at the 135th Fortress Brigade in La Spezia, led by Colonel Almers, for interrogation. During the interrogation process, one of the American officers revealed to the Germans that the mission was a commando raid to blow up tunnels vital to the German supply route. The next morning, on March 25th, information about the capture of the American troops and their mission was reported to General Anton Dostler at the 75th Army Corps headquarters. Dostler immediately contacted his superior, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, to report the capture and request instructions on what to do with the prisoners. Kesselring decided that the captured commandos should be executed. Following consultation with his superior, Dostler then signed the execution order based on the Commando Order, issued by Adolf Hitler in 1942. This order instructed that all captured Allied commandos should be executed without trial, even if they were wearing proper uniforms. Dostler sent a telegram to the 135th Brigade to carry out the execution order. Although Colonel Almers was uncomfortable with the order and attempted to delay its execution, his efforts were unsuccessful. On the morning of March 26th, the 15 American soldiers, still wearing their U.S. military uniforms, were executed at Punta Bianca by a German firing squad. After the execution, their bodies were buried in a disguised mass grave to avoid attention. The execution reflected the wartime brutality of the era and represented a serious violation of the Geneva Conventions, which protected the rights of prisoners of war. After Germany surrendered in 1945, General Anton Dostler, who was responsible for the execution of 15 American soldiers from the OSS during Operation Ginny, was captured by U.S. forces. Dostler was later tried in a military court held by the Allies at the Royal Palace of Caserta on October 8, 1945. He was charged with executing an illegal order, the execution of American soldiers who had surrendered and were wearing legitimate military uniforms, which should have been protected under the 1929 Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war. In his defense, Dostler claimed that he was merely following the orders of higher authorities, based on Hitler's Commando Order. However, the court rejected this defense, as Dostler was considered to have acted independently beyond the scope of that order. The court ruled that the execution of the 15 OSS soldiers was a violation of Article 2 of the Geneva Convention, which prohibited reprisals against prisoners of war. The court also affirmed that no soldier, especially a commanding general, could claim that the summary execution of prisoners of war was legal, even as a retaliatory measure. Dostler was ultimately found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to death. On December 1, 1945, Anton Dostler was executed by a firing squad of 12 men in Aversa, Italy. Dostler's case set a precedent for the principle that the use of superior orders as a defense does not absolve officers of responsibility for carrying out illegal orders and their accountability to stand trial. Immediately after the execution, Dostler's body was lifted onto a stretcher, covered with a white cotton cloth, and taken away by a military truck. His body was buried in grave 9395 of Section H at Pomezia German War Cemetery.